Welcome back, Nick Lenz's Novel Reviews. This is episode number 16. And in this episode, I'm reviewing Star Trek Enterprise, Live by the Code by Christopher R. Bennett. This book takes place over the course of 6 months, from July to December of 2165. The book itself picks up right where the previous book left off. We're having T'Pol looking for Valas, who came back and tried to take over Vulcan. It's only shown in the beginning, but that subplot is actually, there's many different subplots in here, but that subplot is put on hold because the major thing of this book is that I think Christopher Bennett basically was told by Paramount to wrap up this Where storyline because it's been going on for the past few books. So I guess, yeah, and that's the major, that's the big plot line of this book. There's a few other ones, like the one involving the Klingons, another one involving Deluxe's daughter getting married, and of course, the daughter's, right after the ceremony, her xenophobic brother kills her brand spanking new father-in-law during the reception. And, trying to think. Oh, yeah. The first thing with the Klingons is that Phlox is asked, not taken, asked to come to Kronos to do a post-mortem autopsy on the deceased chancellor who had just died. Yeah. So they call him because, well, they probably don't trust any of their experts to figure out how the heck this guy died. And according to what I read in here, he was very unpopular. Yes. He was probably the most worthless chancellor in Klingon history. The guy was like very incompetent, and yes, he was the one who basically convinced his own people to side with the humans against the Romulans. That's referenced in here a little bit, but I'm trying to figure out who the heck killed him and what the heck killed him. It turns out it was actually some virus that apparently Phlox recognized immediately and contacted its creator. Now, according to him, he shared with nobody except one person, his eldest son. Now, they do reference in here the events of the two-parter that happened during Season 4, where it kind of explained the whole thing of why Klingons basically have smooth foreheads during the original series. You ever watch the episode? The little two-parter from Season 4? I do recommend it. There's a reference to that, but it's not technically a follow-up to it. It's just referencing it. But they do bring in one of the characters from the episode. They bring back Admiral Kroll, who was actually the guy in charge of the facility. They bring him back. And it turns out the eldest son was responsible for killing the Chancellor. Instead of killing him off a combat, he chose the route of a coward. So, he was tried and he was executed. And the Admiral basically was dishonored in a way. And apparently, this is something really weird. Apparently, the Admiral was gay. Yeah, I have never heard of a gay Klingon before. And apparently, he was married to a male Klingon, who apparently was his big, hulking bodyguard to Dr. Phlox throughout the whole story. Do that little subplot. That little subplot did not last too long. It's probably by far the quickest subplot I have ever seen wrapped up. That subplot only took one chapter. That's it. Yeah, it's the quickest time I've ever seen a subplot wrapped up. Now, pretty much by the time this book ends, pretty much all the subplots that was running up the whole story are in fact wrapped up, except for a few small ones, like the whole thing searching for Valas, and of course, the Pioneer and the Endeavor go on their own separate journeys. Not much in the, pretty much now, the Where thing is the driving force of this very book. And I'm kind of glad that the whole Where story was wrapped up. Those who know what the Where is, if you remember the episode from Enterprise known as Dead Stop, with that whole sentient space station, it turns out that they're called the Where. And apparently, it was supposed to lead to some advancements in technology, but I think that the reason why they decided to put a worm in I think it was the Endeavor system, they kind of chew away at that because they didn't want them to jump ahead, have their technology jump ahead, basically to, a lot of stuff they mentioned here, are stuff that would be used in the Next Generation series. Now, here's something interesting though: the J.J. Abrams reboot movie does not retcon Enterprise. This series still happened in that universe, that film, because of the whole time traveling thing. But this book involves no time travel. But this is still an enjoyable book to read, and I do recommend reading this plus the previous books of the Rise Federation series. Now, would I recommend watching the show Enterprise? Excuse me. Watch it if you want to. The problem with the series was it seemed like for the first two seasons they had no idea what to do. That's what seemed the major problem. They had one subplot. The only thing interesting for season 1 was all the Temper Cold War thing, which they didn't do very much with it anyways. Now the Temper Cold War thing was wrapped up at the beginning of season 4, but there were subplots that were not wrapped up by the time the series was abruptly canceled. And get this, it has been officially 11 years since that series has been canceled. And luckily enough, these novels actually continue that very story. Now, this book pretty much picks up like 10 years after what fans consider to be the real finale, Terra Prime. The series finale is really bad. If you're curious, go ahead and watch it. They do keep the whole thing of a whole trying to kill off Trip thing, except they turn in the novels where he actually faked his death and become a member of Section 31, which in this book he does technically leave Section 31, and they're still kind of around, but they're kind of slowed down for like a couple hundred years. But now here's something interesting though. Prior to this very book, most of the people who are from Enterprise, the main cast members anyways, most of them did know that Trip was alive, except for Hoshi. She found out that he was alive, and apparently, this is actually pretty interesting. Apparently, she actually found out prior. She actually figured it out prior to actually seeing him again. Apparently, it's explained in here during the Romulan War. Apparently, there was a protocol Lazarus, and it involved basically rescuing Trip in an escape pod. So basically, she's known for some time that he was alive, but he never told her. And in order to basically say, and her hello, which is a kiss in the cheek. Now, Hoshi and Trip were never. The one thing I'm kind of glad they didn't do, they didn't make these two a couple. I like the fact they kept them friends because Trip had a thing for T'Pol. Now, Trip was actually, as a member of Section 31, he was assigned to the ship commanded by Captain Malcolm Reed. Now, the one thing I do not understand about this book, the book is over, okay, and Travis Mayweather is still a lieutenant commander. At this point, he's probably lieutenant commander for 4 years now? At this point, in the form of the story, yeah. He's been lieutenant commander since like 2162 for about almost 3 years. At this point, 3 years he's been lieutenant commander and he's not been offered once a promotion. He was promoted to rank lieutenant during the Romulan War. Apparently he was ensign for a long ass time. I have no idea what exactly they were up to when it comes to Enterprise and the delay in promotions. Oh, and there is Sam Kirk in here. And he has a thing for the Endeavors. I think it's the Endeavor, the ship that commanded by Trip. No, the Endeavor's the Pioneer, which is commanded by Malcolm Reed. He has a thing for the armory officer, but because he's an army officer, he's kind of worried that she might die. But then Hoshi talks to him. Now, he has a lot of respect for Hoshi because she's a legendary communication officer, and he works in communications as well. Actually, he's a historian. But here's something interesting. She tells him to actually go ahead, ask her out, because her fiance used to be the Endeavor's armory officer. Yep. So she knows what it takes. Now, as for how old some of these characters are, I think a lot of them. Now, Archer was in his 40s during the course of the series. At this point, he's probably in his 50s. That's my guess. But a majority of the other characters, now Reed, I would say he's probably about excuse me, 10 years younger than Archer is. Now, as for Hoshi, I think she was in her 20s during the series. But I think that in this particular decade, in this book, she's probably in her mid-30s. And she's getting married. They haven't really developed that little subplot yet of her engagement that much. As a matter of fact, her fiance wasn't even in this book at all. I think he's referenced a few times, but he doesn't physically show up in the book. Maybe show up in the next book. I'm not sure exactly when there's gonna be another book. I'm hoping that there is, because this is a great series, The Rise Federation, a great continuation of the Enterprise series. Now, the Enterprise storyline, the whole thing of the Romulan War, that was wrapped up with that 2-part doxology book that came out several years ago. But this is just a continuation of that. It just continuing the adventures of those characters. Now, the Enterprise ship itself is referenced in here. It is referenced, but it is not physically visited in this whole entire book, because Archer does not. Now, Archer has canceled a couple projects at this point, where the naming ceremony basically naming his ship Enterprise. Because he doesn't want any in his lifetime. He wanted after he passes away. Okay, fine. Whatever that. That could explain why basically that we always consider the original Enterprise the Constellation class Enterprise. Okay, but yeah, this is really good. I get this book a 9 out of 10, and I definitely do recommend it to people who are actually Star Trek fans, because here's the thing. The characters from the show were actually written better in the novels. Kind of like how in Voyager they kind of did that too. Much better writing. High recommendation, definitely. Gorgeous cover, by the way. And that is actually an Andorian vessel surrounded by. Now this ship actually is actually a plot device in the book. It's one of the things involved in the Wear. It's a subplot. It's one of the Wear subplots, but it's interesting nonetheless. Alright, that's it for this episode. Stay tuned for the next episode, which should be episode 16. Yeah, 16. But until then, actually, wait, I think this episode was 16. Yeah, this episode 16. Next episode will be episode 17. Until then, see you there. Bye.